Andrew Barnes-Graham. Welcome to Creative Connections.
Thank you.
It's really nice to
Lovely
meet
to be
you.
here. Great
Yeah,
to meet you too. Yeah,
yeah, thank you. It's so exciting and can't wait to hear all about your practice. So,
yeah,
can you tell us a little bit about where you were born and your childhood? I know you come from a line of artists, so it'd be really interesting to hear about them.
yeah,
And then we can go on to talk about art in high school days for you.
yeah. Great. Yeah, well, I was born and raised in Gisborne and Wainui Beach. Um, my dad was a sort of farmer, but my grandfather was an artist all his life. They immigrated from Scotland. He went to the Glasgow School of Art and got a scholarship at the Slade in London. Then he came back and he actually got a commissioned war artist with Peter McIntyre. And when he came back from the war, he joined the New Zealand Open because he was a golfer, and he got a runner-up, and he hadn't had a game of golf through the war, and suddenly got a runner-up in the New Zealand Open, nearly won it. So he had to decide whether he was going to be a golfer who painted or a painter who played golf, and he decided to be a painter who played golf. And so he was a sort of really inspiring guy. I remember the first time when I was in the studio down it was over a garage on the beach, and no one was allowed to go into a studio. And I remember as a sort of 7-year-old, he used to walk up the road to get some milk, and I knew how long it would take. So I knew that I had about 10 minutes to sort of go up and see what all this fuss was. And I snuck up there, and there was a window that I could see when he came around the corner from the dairy. And I remember sort of going and thinking that this was this wonderland of the smell of oil paint and terps and linseed oil and stacks of paintings on the floor that I was rifling through. And it just sort of felt like a very magical place. It was obviously very private for him, but I felt like I stumbled across this sort of wonderland. And I think it sort of stayed with me for a long time, sort of even sort of, later on in school days, certain smells would just take me straight back to, that studio.
Mm.
And my dad painted. He was a farmer. He was a very good landscape painter. My grandfather's first cousin was been touted now as one of the British's most important female modernist painters, Wilhelmina Barnes-Graham. She was in the St Ives group and was best friends with Barbara Hepworth and Ben Nicholson.
Wow.
He lived in St Ives, and yeah, and then it goes back to apparently a story goes that quite a few sort of generations back that we were sort of somehow related to Sir William Douglas Fetts, who was the president of the Scottish Royal Academy. So there was sort of like a long history of of artists, and my nana painted. She sort of got taught by Ida Carey, who was a sort of quite well-known sort of Maori painter, and so yeah, painting's just always it's always been around, and it was sort of quite normal.
Mm.
But yeah,
How
that was where I
amazing.
got it. Yeah,
Yeah,
with
that's a
the right,
wonderful
right next,
it's a wonderful
right,
way to grow up, isn't it?
yeah, especially on Wainui Beach. It's
Yes, how
a
beautiful.
beautiful place. So, yeah, it was a beautiful, crazy sort of rugged
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, wild beach, beautiful beach.
Yeah, it's
Very
such a beautiful spot. I love Wainui. Do you know Tony Ogle?
yeah. No, I know Tony, and a few others down there. Willie Peters, who was a heart surgeon friend of mine, but he's gone back into sculpting. But yeah,
Mm.
Tony's had
Yeah.
a lovely place on Wainui Beach. Yeah,
Yes. And do you know
really good
Martin
place.
Bailey?
Martin Bailey, I don't know.
He's a friend
No.
of a guy who you'll know. No, is it Noel or Noah who lives there still?
Um, I left when I was 10 and moved to Auckland because mum and dad separated and stuff. So yeah, maybe I always sort of go,
Yeah.
do I know their mum? I sort of, yeah,
Yeah. No, I'll take that. I'll take all that stuff out. It's all good.
yeah,
Um, yeah, I mean it sounds like you've got amazing DNA and so great that you
mm,
managed to sort of discover a life as an artist yourself.
mm,
So how did
yeah.
you find high school art? Were you starting to excel?
Yeah, it was my I was very sporty, so sport was my main sort of passion, and rugby and cricket, and was really really involved in that. But art and tech drawing were my best subjects at school, and I was actually in the same class as Brett Graham at school,
Mm,
and so we were the sort of the two artists that went through, and he obviously carried on straight after school. But I got sort of bad career advice at that stage. I was wanting to become an architect because I had a sort of an uncle who was an architect, and he had a Ferrari Dino, and I was like, oh, that's look, and Mum always said, oh, well, you're never going to make any money in art. But then got bad career advice at school saying you had to be good at physics, and I wasn't really good at physics, so I went down the design sort of way and started working for advertising agencies and graphic design and stuff. And so went down that path initially, thinking that
mm,
there was really no, like in rugby and cricket at that time, there was no money in it. It was a non-professional sport, and there was no way to make money in it, and there
yeah.
was no money to make in art. So yes, I went down that route, initially
Mm.
after school. But you
And
love school and stuff.
sorry to interrupt. Were you thinking then that, I do want to be an artist, a full-time professional artist, but I probably can't, so I'll do that instead? Was that your thoughts?
Yeah, I think I sort of believed that, I didn't really have anyone. Granddad sort of, when he came back from the war, Peter McIntyre wanted him to sort of, tour the country and paint together. And Granddad apparently said no because Peter McIntyre was a bit too much of a drinker for him, and he was more of a little Scotch tippler. But so he never went with him. So he never sort of really, he didn't have to make a lot of money. He had sort of had quite a bit of money from Scotland, and so he didn't really, and he had some land that he sold off at the time. So, but I never really had anyone in my life that I knew was close who really had made a successful career financially out of art. So I just believe that it just worked like sport in those days. It just was
Mm.
just more of the thing that you did for fun.
Yeah, wasn't
So
an
that's why I
option.
went down more. No, it was just if you wanted a commercial, to go down to more a commercial route to, you had to go around to design or architecture or those sort of types of things.
Yeah. And then in
So
your
that's what.
30s, you ended up at Elam School of Fine Art. So how did that
Yeah,
happen?
it was through I was in business with a business partner. We're 50-50 partners in the company, and he was my best friend. And I was supposed to do the creative work, and he was supposed to do all the new business. And anyway, I just came in, and he wasn't paying me that much. And went through a bank statement once and realised that he'd been paying himself and not paying me. And I was like shocked. He was I seen what I thought was my best friend, and so it really shocked me. And I sort of gave it all up, and I thought, this is, what do I do and what am I doing with my life? And so it was a real sort of time where I thought, okay, I really wanted to. I started painting again. I wanted to do that, so I thought, well, let's just do that. And I had a gallery, Anna Hansen. I don't know if you know, she just passed away,
Yeah.
but she was a lovely person.
Yeah, she was a good friend, Anna.
Yeah, she was a good friend of mine too. So so the two Annas at Lethem Gallery gave me a chance when I sort of had no training or anything like that. And Anna said, well, why don't you go back to art school? Why don't you, go and get a finance degree? So I did, and I applied for Elam, and here comes Brett Graham back from then. He was one of the obviously the tutors there at the time, and I was living in a sort of a garage in Herne Bay, and obviously I didn't get the letter to come and show work. And I'm driving down the motorway, and I get a phone call saying, Andrew, are you supposed to be at an interview? And I'm going, well, I'm not going for any job. I don't know what you're talking about. He goes, well, at Eden, oh, yes, 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 I've been waiting for that letter. And it obviously never got to me.
Oh,
And he goes,
wow.
well, we're closing up in about sort of 10 minutes. Can you get in 10 minutes with some live work? And I said, yes, 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 yes. So I raced home, and yeah, I found out it was Brett Graham who had recognised my name and walked outside and rang me to let me know, get your ass here because we're
Yeah.
about closing up. And yeah, so I got in luckily, and that was the start of the you know a far more exciting time of my life. Yeah,
How amazing that you got there in the end. And that
yeah.
that connection with Lethem Gallery,
Mm.
You must have been painting a little bit, and was it because you knew Anna and she knew your
No,
work?
no, no, I did everything that you're not supposed to do as an artist, and door knocked galleries and with your portfolio. And I look back now, and I sort of cringe that I even had the gall to even do that when I look back at the work. But Anna obviously saw something in me and decided to show some of my work, and they sold. And so she was
That's
amazing.
great.
She was
Yeah,
lovely, lovely.
Anna's been on the podcast. Have you heard her
I
episode?
see.
Yeah.
I have to look when I get some time after my show.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, she's such a beautiful person.
Yeah.
It's the
And it was a
world is a
crazy funeral too, wasn't it?
I
Having
loved it
it was
though.
just hilarious, wasn't it? It was
Yeah, it
just
was brilliant.
awesome. So
That
her,
Yeah,
that
and
guy was great.
the family, created as such a sort of artistic environment in that old church, which was
Yeah,
just so perfect and had all her art on display, and yeah, it was so
yeah,
perfect for Anna. I often think of
yeah,
that funeral as my sort of gold standard.
yeah.
Anyway, so Elam, how was that, and what was happening with your work while you were there?
Well, it's very experimental. It was interesting because I came sort of from with Grandad sort of going through sort of the Glasgow School of Art, where life drawing from statues and stuff from museums was a very technically based sort of program, where Elam's very not about skill or things. It's all about experimentation and finding your own sort of voice and path. So I found that very interesting and challenging, where I was sort of wanting to be sort of very technical. They were about not being technical and being very sort of much about experimenting. So that was sort of good in a way, because I had that other side with my dad and my granddad. So it was intimidating. Had good tutors. Had Peter Robinson and Louise Fong and Fiona Partington, and it was interesting. It was sort of, we were the last year where they had specialised sort of sections, like a painting section or a photography section or a sculpture section. I gather now it's all very sort of multidisciplinary. So yeah, Chris Heffy, love Chris Heffy. He was a really good inspiration. So we had some really good painters in there. And yeah, I did a lot of experimentation. If I look back on it now, it was just, it was an interesting time. I found it challenging, and it probably wasn't till my last year that I sort of really started getting into portraiture.
Uh-huh.
And,
Excuse me a minute. I'm just going to pause.
yeah, yeah. So it was a very interesting time, and that's when I sort of in the last year, graduation year, sort of started sort of looking at portraiture. And Peter Stitchbury just won the Wallace Award, and Judy Miller had done a bit with abstract, but sort of then I started, and I was really fascinated with Peter Stitchbury's sort of portraiture. And yeah, that sort of really got me onto just really, looking at the face. And I always remember my granddad sort of saying that, it takes 2 lifetimes to learn everything there is to learn about painting. So you're never going to get bored. And so I sort of really just thought that I'm going to really concentrate on portraiture, and I'm still at the end of it, still not going to know everything that I want to know about the face. So yeah, and then I had Paul Nash down in Gisborne sort of say, look, Barney, keep up with the portrait. Why don't you do a whole, just dedicate your life to portrait? So that's what I've done, and so yeah, that was the start of the journey of painting
Mm.
the female face.
Yeah, and what was it, do you think, that captured you at the beginning about faces and portraiture?
I mean, well, Grandad was a great drawer. He was a fantastic sort of drawer, and I don't know, you sort of, you start doing art history, and you look at the sort of the depth of art history, and how women have been depicted through the last 200 years of painting, through Klimt and Schlegel and Modigliani, and all of these sort of great artists, and how they portray sort of women in a period of time. So you sort of look at those portraits and you sort of feel like what it would have been like to live, at that time, through the way that they portray, female beauty. And so that interested me, I think, at the start, and I suppose that's why probably the first sort of 8 or so years, 10 years were really based on looking at the past and doing portraiture that was yeah, based on the history, a little bit of a history of art. You know, I did a work when I was at Sanderson, and it was about 1960s screen goddesses and stuff. So I just loved that sort of thing. And so yeah, that sort of got me started,
Mm.
and then it sort of probably changed to thinking after doing that in different styles and stuff, try to get myself away from Peter Stitchbury as to try and find my own sort of voice and interpretation of how I paint. I started sort of looking more into, well, that those works say something about that history of time, where those women were, whether it was through Vermeer or Picasso or wherever. That what I really need to do is be doing portraits of now, so that in the future people look back at now and go, that's what it must have been felt like to live in those times, in the 90s and the
Mm.
2000s and stuff. So I started becoming more interested in painting about the problems that we're facing in contemporary culture and living on the planet now, which sort of had to do obviously with climate change and the issues around cultural identity and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah, you can see that. And then
Mm.
you've more recently been thinking about the future through your work, haven't you?
Yeah, yeah. Well, sort of, yeah. I had a life-changing sort of event where, well, I've had sort of, a couple of near-death experiences, but the second one was actually a death experience where I'd um, thought, yeah, came out of heart surgery and the day after had flatlined and 2 minutes of CPR and two shock treatments later, they managed to bring me back. And so, when an event like that happens to you, you start to think more about the future. And so I think my sort of work was in a way it was a natural progression, thinking about the past of art history, then talking about sort of social issues we have now in contemporary society, but then sort of going on into when you realise that your time's limited, that you start thinking of the future a lot more.
Mm.
I started going down these realms of where do you look when you want to look at the future, and really, science is the best sort of predictor of the future. And so I got quite involved in sort of quantum entanglement and sort of ideas around that, and exoplanets, and realizing that there was, there's 20 billion exoplanets just in our solar system, the Milky Way, that are obviously they're planets that revolve around their star the same distance that the Earth does around the sun. That in that sweet spot where you can, hold water, and then where hold water is where you can single cell organisms or microbes can sort of turn into single cell, to double, and to grow and grow and grow, and eventually sort of come out of the water and turn into humans. And like I had a good friend of mine from school, Willie Peters, who's now a sculptor, but he was a heart surgeon, and he rewrote a story about how he worked out how a single celled um, bloodstream, which fish have, can turn from that to an upright double helix, which is a bloodstream of a human. And he worked out how that could change from that to that. So I could sort of eventually prove that we know where we came from, from the oceans. And
Mm.
he went over to Harvard and explained it. And he did these really cool books and stuff. And obviously, like Einstein, he will, it'll be probably after he's dead that it's been proven that he was right. Um,
Mm.
but Einstein was interesting about the quantum entanglement, that he called it quantum entanglement, spooky action at a distance, because he sort of predicted that you couldn't travel faster than the speed of light, so that with quantum entanglement is two particles that can speak in real time and influence each other over billions and billions of light years in a millisecond. So how can that happen when you can't travel faster than the speed of light? So I got really down to that and about exoplanets, and so then I sort of started looking at trying to create these landscapes that felt like that they could be um, from Earth, but they could be from another planet, and started drawing my own figures rather than working directly from photographs that I had been doing. Um, they went a bit alien. I've brought them back to be a little bit sort of in between alien and human. I'm
Mm,
still trying to find that drawing practice in my work that I'd hadn't been doing for so long, directly working from photographs. So I think this last series, this series that I'm doing at the moment, I think sort of there's a real nice balance where they sort of feel human, but they still feel like they could be from other worlds or
from the
different
future. Yeah.
from the future or
Yeah.
yeah.
And that, I'm so sorry to hear that you went through that kind of experience. But I guess, as we
Mm,
discussed earlier, it can be seen as a little bit of a gift. And
yeah.
how do you feel like it's made you? I mean, it's obviously making you think about the future, and I guess it is making you think about your own mortality. But
Mm.
has that sort of made you approach your work in a different way at all?
Yeah, I don't know sure it's a good thing or not a bad thing. I'm working harder and faster now than I ever have. I'm feeling like I haven't got much time to do all the work or get to the level of work that I want to get to, before my time's up. So I'm frantically painting at the moment, which
Really?
is great, and I love
Yeah.
it because this. People were saying that you're going to be a lot more careful now that you've had this death experience, and I'm going no, I'm going to take way more risks, and because we all realize life is short, but when you go through a death experience, you sort of realize that I know there's not much time, but I just didn't quite realize how much I still wanted to fit into that limited amount of
Mm,
time.
mm,
And with, I suppose Granddad telling me it takes 2 lifetimes to learn everything there is to learn about painting, I realize that I've got to paint really quickly now to sort of even get close to, being any good at what I do, with such short period of time left.
mm. But it's given you, I mean, you haven't been told you have a short amount of time left. You've just because you're in your 50s.
Well, I'm
Is that,
turning 60 next year.
are you?
I stopped
Amazing.
counting I stopped counting when I was 45. So, my wife's holding, oh, it's the 60th. Is it really? Okay. I don't feel it, even though after what I've been through, I've felt like I've fully recovered, um, and I've always lived my life, in a way that every day is your last. So I've had a really great life in the way I've lived. But yeah, when you really face your own mortality like that, you realise there's so much more I want to do, and
Mm,
especially my work. Mm.
yeah. And the good thing about being an artist is you can work until you die, if that's when
Yeah,
you're 98 or,
absolutely.
which is amazing. You still have a
I
lot
sort
of
of feel like
time.
yeah, totally. I feel like I'm semi-retired now. I mean, if I was retired, I had all the money in the world, which obviously I'm an artist, so I don't. But but if I did, the way I spend my days now is exactly how I'd spend my days if I was fully retired. So I sort of feel like I'm semi-retired anyway.
Yeah, isn't that amazing?
Mm.
It's
Yeah, my,
great to
my
be
granddad.
doing something that you
Yeah,
love so much. Yeah.
yeah, totally. Yeah, very
Yeah.
blessed and lucky. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah,
No, I'm
yeah,
glad that you got through that experience. That would have been very traumatic for you and your family, I imagine.
yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, my wife was amazing. She gave up work and came in every day. I was in there for over a month, and she came in every day. It was yeah,
Mm. Mm. Yeah.
scary for her. Mm,
Very scary. Yeah, it's really scary
mm,
for the support people, I think. More scary than people talk about in a way. Yeah.
yeah,
So, your work, as we were discussing, you've kind of gone through different iterations and different series and sort of come back sometimes
mm,
and develop.
yeah,
But can you just kind of describe your paintings to somebody who hasn't seen them before?
yeah. I suppose I'd like to. They're sort of they're hard edged, contemporary portraits, with a sort of a pop realist style. Um, it's yeah. it's hard to describe because I felt like I've trying to, I look at a lot of artists' work all the time. I teach, so I need to sort of know about a lot about art history and about contemporary art practices so I can teach them to my students. At the same time, I'm trying to sort of not look at their work and try and find my own way so that which is getting harder and harder to do. And when there's so many artists out there now that it's very, very hard to be original and work in a way that no one's working like.
Mm,
So to describe it, yeah, it's hard because I feel like I'm sort of changing all the time, trying to find that way of
yeah.
expressing the figure or the face, especially in a way that's unique. So it's hard to describe. So, but yeah, hard edge
But
pop
yeah,
realism.
it is. I mean, I do feel like you've absolutely found your style. It's very sort of individual to you.
Yeah,
Yeah, even across the different ideas, or especially, with all the portrait work, it feels it's very much like your work, even though you're changing the ideas.
so much. Yeah,
Yeah. So you have often it's normally one person who's in the foreground. It's always
mm,
a woman, isn't it? Though
yeah.
with those
I
portraits.
have painted men before. They're just not as attractive to look at as females. I don't
Yeah.
know. Yeah, I don't know why. I think, yeah, I don't know. I've always I grew up sort of with my mother and my sister, so I've had sort of strong female characters in my life in my formative sort of years growing up. So I see them as strong figures. I see them as matriarchs. I see them as the hold together of families, the people that probably should be running the world.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah.
Mm, I agree. Yeah. And the women, I mean, I find it very interesting because I have read reviews on your work where people, say it's very thought-provoking or a little bit dark or even a little bit
Mm,
depressing, which I don't
mm,
see at all with your work. But the
mm.
women, I think they vary, the way you capture them vary from series to series a little bit, don't they? Sometimes it
Yeah,
is a bit darker, and other times
yeah,
it's like it's come out of a fashion magazine, absolute
yeah,
beauty. Um,
yeah.
so what are you thinking about with how you're trying to capture the women?
Well, I sort of work in series, so there'll be a theme that I'll think about when I start a series of works that will the whole idea of the a group of works are sort of based on. But when I'm picking the sort of figures, I suppose I look for found images to work from, and I'm trying to find the right expression, and I want the expression to be sort of quite ambiguous. I choose characters who that are not famous. They're not, you don't know them, because I want sort of the viewer to come to the work and not have any preconceived ideas about who they're looking at. I want them to find their own interpretation of that person. So the ambiguous sort of pose, I suppose, is the one where you don't quite know what they're thinking, and you've got to sort of decipher. And that could change depending on maybe the mood that you come to view the painting from day to day, or the longer you spend with it, the more you feel like you get to know them as a sort of a stranger becomes a friend, and then a close friend, and sort of like that. So yeah, I just try to find something that's a really lovely starting point to look at, but you've sort of got to delve in to try and find more.
Mm,
Whether they sometimes people think they look dark, it probably is to do with the series of works I'm doing, that I'm thinking about. Sort of after I went through that sort of passion stage of art history of looking at sort of ideal female beauty of the past of screen goddesses or whatever, and started sort of moving towards about sort of contemporary ideas about what it's like to live now in our society. And so did series on things like cumulative intentions, which was really based around using cross-cultural costuming. So there might be a Russian headdress on a South Korean sort of dress with some beads that sort of come from the South Pacific, and it was all sort of these ideas around a blended society of culture, especially in this country and a lot of countries, that I think worked well in this country more than sort of other countries. But we're a society where Even though we come from different cultures, we're probably we realise that we're more similar than we are different.
Mm.
And but some people can sort of find, often I would sometimes use very dark palettes, or I always got interested in using inks, and just browns, and so yeah, I like the idea that these underlying stories, can be dark for some people. If that's the case, then that was the intention of moving away from just pretty, fashion sort of type-esque models.
Mm.
Yeah.
So do you feel like the beauty of the woman is less important in some series? Is that what you think?
Well, I think sort of beauty sort of comes into really the deciphering of the viewer, and it
Mm.
has through history. So I'm giving them an opening of the story, I hope, in the way I'm portraying the figures in my work. And it's up to them. I find them beautiful. Maybe some people don't. That's up to that's everyone's idea of beauty is different, and it depends on where they've come from, what their social circumstances, and so yeah, if that's the case, it's good. I want people to have different views
Yeah.
on the work. It means that I'm probably on the right direction of what I'm trying to achieve.
Yeah, absolutely. I can totally see that. And the eyes are obviously, in some series more than others, the eyes play a big part in the work. Can you talk
Yeah.
to us about the eyes? And there has been a series where you've done different colored eyes in
Mm.
one face.
Yeah.
So, yeah, can you talk to us about the eyes and what you're trying to portray?
Yeah. Well, I've always said that the eyes are the window to the soul. So I suppose when you're doing ambiguous poses, the eyes are the ones that allure you in, for people to sort of spend a bit more time in front of it to find their own ideas about what they think this character in my paintings are thinking about. I did a series when I started looking back at sort of more modern ideas around what it looks like to live in our times now, was a series about the reverse gaze, which was basically the figures really looking directly back at you, and it sort of sometimes can be sort of confronting that you're not viewing them; they're actually viewing us, and you're not sure whether they're happy with what they're seeing looking back at us. And it was supposed to be the idea of sort of reflecting back on ourselves and looking at ourselves, and what are we doing? In the future, are they going to be happy with what I was looking at nostalgia, and and the one thing about nostalgia is that what we do today will depend on in the future whether we look back nostalgically. So the reverse gaze back at us, and how we're treating the planet, how we're treating each other, will decipher, and what we do about that, in the future, whether they look back at us nostalgically or not.
Yeah.
And then so when I was looking at that future, then the different coloured eyes, which sort of, I suppose, was a nod to AI, or gene manipulation, ideas around that, and that's why I sort
Mm.
of started putting different coloured eyes in my portraits.
Interesting. Yeah, and
Mm,
then I love the way you capture the women in different ways, with some of them they're like beautifully made up with perfect eyebrows
mm,
and lipstick, and other women in your portraits don't have any makeup on at all, which is
mm.
is another way to communicate, I suppose. What are you thinking when it comes to makeup?
I think it's, yeah. I mean, there was very much a lot of it in my early sort of work that was sort of were nods to sort of female beauty in the 50s up to the 80s, and sort of that ideal sort of fashion model sort of type figure. They were sort of made up and stuff, but I've sort of moved into sort of more ideas sort of through contemporary culture that that's not so important anymore, about how a woman feels about herself, or how we look at females. I wanted the ideas to be sort of more not about the beauty, about just feeling of what it was like in contemporary culture. So
Mm.
I've moved away from that, and the future, the works I'm doing now that looking into the future, I'm sort of paring it back even more. and it's about my color palette, and I'm not doing individual eye brushes, and I'm doing different ways of doing hair, and trying to make them that like I don't know, on exoplanets around the galaxy, do the females wear makeup? I don't know, probably
Yeah.
not.
Yeah. You can't imagine it in a way. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting. I mean, I guess they're all symbols, aren't they? And they're communicating
Mm,
something either to you
yeah.
or to the viewer.
Yeah.
And even the choice of clothing is quite interesting, and it feels like you sort of have a bit of fun there with what you're putting them in. So not only are
Yeah.
you using traditional outfits that are expressing something, but also just sort of
Yeah.
everyday clothes, and then, accessories and expression, and they're all very symbolic, aren't they?
Very, very, yeah. About culture and about civilizations, and yeah, I was interested in civilizations, the rise and fall of civilizations, and they are all about, um, or the death of civilizations is usually stems from the death of culture within that civilization. And so I was trying to allude to sort of how important culture is, and the different cultures, and that's why I was sort of blending different costuming and stuff like that,
Mm,
because it really is. You look at all the civilizations that have collapsed, that we know of in our histories from Earth, that they all started from hedonism and greed and those sorts of things, whether it be the Roman Empire, or and so and it's just a breakdown of culture, because it's the culture
mm,
that really sort of holds communities together.
yeah.
So
And
yeah, very important.
the poses and the expressions of the women. Are you wanting to express an emotion or a feeling in particular? Are you thinking that as you're painting, or are you just representing something for the viewer to then take away?
I think yeah, something, there's like needs to be a starting point. If you haven't got sort of something in a painting, then people will just walk right past it. I'm fascinated about people who go into really great art museums, and they walk along and they step in front of a work, and they'll give it probably 2-3 seconds, and they'll walk along to the next, we'll give it 2 or 3 seconds, and you go, oh my god, this is a really incredible work, and you've given it 3 seconds to look at. So you've got to have something that sort of captures you initially, to stand in front of a work to give it a bit of time. So but then you hope that sort of there's something in there that allows them to sort of stay a bit longer and really think about what they're looking at. Um,
Mm,
so I suppose I'm looking for poses that have an initial sort of strikingness about them, that you want to look at them, but then some enough ambiguity in it that allows them to sort of think about your own experience in front, or that viewer's own experience in front of that work, and that it can be different for every viewer who stands in front of it.
mm, yeah. Yeah, I can totally see that. And I feel like your work is that sort of work that captures the viewer. There's something really interesting and beautiful about what you create that would is very
Thank
captivating.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
And when you think about the context of where you're placing the person,
Mm,
you make these beautiful landscapes, which obviously connects to work that you've done before, and to
mm,
your dad, and
yeah.
that sort of is part of it. But how do you choose the landscapes that are behind your people, your person?
Yeah, it's interesting that the early works that were about sort of fashion, I suppose, were a lot easier. They were more pop arty, and so that was sort of quite easy to find a landscape that's related to them. The ones through the series that we're thinking about sort of how it lives today, and looking about now, they were harder. Um, a lot of it had to do with just feeling like these people belong, these figures belonged in the place that it was, that sort of still tuned to the idea around the theme of the series of work. Um, Now it's sort of changed when I've sort of got into the sort of looking more at the future, and so I'm trying to. I've actually, as I sort of started not directly working from photographs and started painting my own drawings of figures, I found myself doing the same with my landscapes. And because I was looking at exoplanets, going, we know that there's about sort of, I think, Hubble telescope is, they've found about at least sort of 10 exoplanets in our solar system that we can see. There's so many more, but we can't actually see directly onto the surface of the planet. But we know it probably has water and landscape and stuff like this. So I go, I wonder what that landscape looks like. So I've been sort of then trying to simplify and draw and create these landscapes that feel like they could be from Earth, but they could be from maybe another galaxy. So
Yeah.
my landscapes are evolving as well as my figures, I suppose, which is
Mm.
exciting because it's sort of um, yeah, I can sort of make up these landscapes. They're loosely based, obviously, on photographs obviously sort of sourced from Earth, but
Yeah.
I'm really trying to sort of there's no constraints about how I can portray them because I don't want them to be so realistic
Yeah,
to
which
other
is so good, isn't it? And that's the lovely thing, I guess, about exploring ideas around the future for you. I mean, it's
yeah,
almost like it's freeing you up because there's no actual rules or realities that we know of, kind
yeah,
of thing.
yeah,
It feels like the landscapes in the latest series, they're more even slightly cubist or quite abstract almost.
yeah, yeah. I love abstract work. I have a lot of abstract work in my in the house that I collect, and um, it's interesting because it's hard when you've been sort of trained in a way where my grandfather felt were quite sort of realist sort of landscape painters. You realise when you work like that, it's very hard to become sort of abstract. So it does take time and a lot of thought and of simplifying down elements to sort of create it to make it sort of more abstract, but still within the realm of fitting and with the way I'm doing the portraiture at the time. You can't sort of have a figure that sort of is painted totally differently from the landscape because it just sort of feels so out of place. And you've obviously got to have these figures sort of sitting into a place that you can really believe sort of that they coexist in that space. So yeah, I suppose that's the challenging part of me drawing my own figures is I'm having to now create these sort of landscapes that they sort of reside in, which is
Yeah,
exciting. It's fun. So
that's really
it's
exciting. And do you
yeah,
feel like it's a sort of a different feeling for you creating works that are a little bit more out of your own head?
yeah. It's yeah, because you don't know if it's working or not. Whereas when you're working directly from photographs, you can see. You look at the photograph, you look at your work, and you go, "Oh, yeah, that's I can change that and make it more look like the photograph." When you're sort of making up, I don't know what it's supposed to look like. So I don't know if it looks good. I don't know if it really suits. Does it sort of? Yeah, it's made me having to look at my work a lot more. Usually I'd just sort of I'd do a day's work. I'd sit at the end of my day's work and I'd look at my painting and I'd pretty much figure out where I wanted to be all my day's work tomorrow. And I'd look at where I wanted to be at the stage of that painting. So I'd go through every process and how long that would take. And so I want to get by this time tomorrow. I want to have my painting to that stage. And so it was very formulaic. Um, but now it's not. I've got to really sit down. Sometimes I bring them home and look at them while I'm sort of watching TV just to get a feeling about it because I don't know what they're supposed to look like. I'm
Mm.
sort of making it up. So I'm finding I'm having to look at my work a lot more because sometimes at the end of the day painting you're so tired I can't look at it anymore. I'm just so tired. I'm exhausted. I'll come back tomorrow and then you come back tomorrow and go I've just got to get onto it. So you don't really sort of have that yeah, that time
Mm.
in front of you where you're just sort of trying to sort of jump into it and feel that
Yeah.
what it's doing to you.
That's quite a different process, isn't it, in a way? And I mean, that could be a little bit sort of terrifying for some artists to have that kind of freedom in a way. You could see it
Yeah,
as that and sort of taking those risks. And do you think that has directly come out of your near-death experience?
no question. Yeah, yeah. as I said, friends will say, look, you're going to be a lot more careful now. And I'm going, no, 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 I'm going to take way more risks. And
Mm.
I treat it as a blessing. It's sort of, I was lucky. I had a guardian angel up there who's looked over me and allowed me to sort of, have a couple of second chances. And but you look back on it and you go, actually, it was it's I'm sort of glad in a way it happened, although it was so horrible at the time. It changes you of what you see as important. Um, you certainly look at your friends and your family and your partner in a way that's you realise what's important, and um, it's certainly not about possessions or things or money.
No. Yeah,
Mm,
I agree.
it's about
Yeah.
experiences.
Yeah. Oh, that's
Yeah.
that's interesting, isn't it? I mean, I wonder what would have happened if you hadn't had that experience. What your art would have, how it would have evolved.
Yeah. I mean, it would have evolved. It just would have evolved a lot more slowly.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, it's
And
great.
then I would have run out of time, and it was like, oh gosh, too late.
Yeah. That's
Maybe the
yeah,
next life.
it is a gift, isn't it? In a way.
Mm,
Yeah, stressful gift.
yeah.
Yeah. And back to the landscapes. Are you thinking about New Zealand at all?
Yes, I sort of have to, I suppose, because I'm selling them in New Zealand, so there has to be sort of connection, not only with the figure, but there has to be a connection to the landscape that people can identify with, or have a starting point where they go, oh, that makes me feel like my batch who I used to go to, or the country farm I used to where I grew up on and stuff. So all of those sort of things, when I'm sourcing sort of imagery that I sort of work from, then sort of change and manipulate. Often they are from places around the planet, but I try to bring them if they're so unrecognizable as New Zealand. I try to bring a little bit of back towards a sort of something that possibly you could see in New Zealand. You definitely.
That you could relate to. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then the woman, I'm jumping around here a little bit, but I've got so many
yeah,
questions.
yeah.
Your woman that you're portraying, are you thinking at all about gender identity, and because some of your figures do seem a little bit androgynous, and
Yeah.
some are more
Yeah.
masculine than others. So are you thinking kind of across the board in that way?
Absolutely. I mean, that was when I was sort of doing the work that was sort of about sort of contemporary society now and trying to portray the idea of cultures and stuff. And obviously that's an issue, that is, strong, what we're going through now. And so, yeah, blurred distinct gender lines, distinctions were, very much a part of um, sometimes picking sort of characters that had that weren't sure if they were male or female.
Mm,
Um, More so in the face than the clothing. Um, it's interesting because you look at um, men who are just stunningly beautiful and could easily with a wig you just go, it looks like a woman, and vice versa. Sort of women who have sort of things. So I think when you sort of start looking at the face. For as long as I sort of had 25 years of painting it, yeah, surely it would come into your work, because it is what we see and deal with today in culture.
yeah, it's real life. And are you capturing different
Mm,
cultures through your people? I mean, you are obviously through some of the symbols like the clothing.
yeah,
Are you painting women from or people from different cultures, obviously?
occasionally, yeah, occasionally. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting how talking the thing, I'm teaching some of my students who are into portraiture. You only have to move a line 1 millimeter, and it can totally change an expression. A line and eye can sort of really sort of go, oh my gosh, that sort of looks, from Maori, but there's could be Inuit, it could be, it could be Polynesian, it could be sort of, so there's, you don't have to move lines very far in a face to sort of make a face look like it comes from, a different part of the world.
Mm.
Um, yeah, I've painted lots of yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah.
part of sort of how we do. We know we're in a society where we're
Yeah.
bombarded with imagery and stuff like that, and so yeah.
You're not
And
capturing sort of a particular race necessarily. Not that's not a
no,
big focus. But
no, no.
it could be connecting to many races, as you said.
Yeah,
Yeah, and especially because
um,
you don't really use a skin color as such, do you?
no. I move it around quite a bit with the way I do skin color. It depends on the series. It depends on sort of what that's about, but and whether I'm experimenting with different inks or oils or washes or acrylics or all of the above in the same thing. I sort of tend to sometimes go, okay, this series I'm going to really work in raw umbers, and other times I'm bringing in more siennas. So yeah, they're all over the place.
Mm,
I don't know what's next. I'm looking forward to how I do it next. I'm sort of always, I say, trying to find that way of doing it in a way that's unique and different and hasn't sort of really been done before.
yeah, and you really very much achieve that. And some of your people are quite sort of blue tones, aren't they? And
Mm.
but then it feels like the contours are a big part of your style as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's I suppose the face is so round. Although I do love artists that paint flat. Alex Katz was I used to love his sort of the way he simplifies the face. Um, yeah, so no, I'm yeah, it's like there's so many sort of ideas, and as I say, as Granny said, it takes 2 years to learn everything there is to learn about painting. I'm just sort of trying everything, just
Yeah.
and so when I gravitate and sort of find something, I feel like I've sort of taken as far as I think that I could take it. I sort of jump. I must be just a gallerist's nightmare.
But I feel like it's still very cohesive. You are clearly working in series, but
Mm.
it still feels very much like your work. It's not like it's something totally different. Although last year you made a, a collection of work that did feel quite different. It might have been this year actually. The quite sort of futuristic landscapes.
Yeah, yeah. It was a very sort of scary sort of series to do because it was so different from my work, and you always worry about doing too big a jump that people won't people who liked your work don't won't follow you with the new work. So yeah, it is always a risk. Um, you want to jump, but you want to jump too far. So that series was a bit of a risk.
Mm,
I sort of got lucky where one collector bought the whole series, which so
really?
was very lucky. Yeah,
That's
don't know who he
amazing.
is. We want to know. Yeah, so I'm not sure if I want to know who he is. But that was when I was really starting to do my own figures. And so that was scary enough, let alone such a big jump. But
Mm,
that sort of gave me the confidence that I was, taking the right risks, and so it gave me a lot of confidence that I was going down the right road of, creating and drawing my own figures.
yeah. How amazing is that? Wow. Every
Yeah, it was.
artist's dream. Yeah. And
Yeah, it was.
sorry.
Yeah.
Uh,
Karen.
and what made you make that series?
Well, it was from this near-death experience, and then me sort of trying to sort of create, my own figures that might be from other worlds, not just from Earth, because I was looking at sort of physics a lot, and so I had to sort of change the landscapes because these we couldn't have these sort of alien sort of looking figures sort of in a realistic sort
Mm,
of like landscape. So that made me having to sort of really start looking at abstracting landscape.
mm.
Um, so yeah,
And
it was.
that collection was just landscapes without the people, wasn't it? That
Oh, those ones. Yeah.
yeah.
That was yeah. Okay, that didn't have the figures in them. Yeah, that was yeah. When I was really looking at sort of quantum entanglement and the idea of particles be able to speak to each other in real time, sort of vast distances, and so that got me into the idea of exoplanet stuff. So that was, I suppose, a series of work which was the first time I've never put portraits into my thing.
Mm.
I suppose it was sort of like I need to develop my landscapes to put them back into these new figures that
Yeah,
I'm doing.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes
So that
sense.
that's what that was. Yeah, that
It
wasn't
was
the series that got bought out. It was another series of work that I did with them together. But yeah, I
okay.
know
Yeah.
what series you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. It feels like it was a
Mm,
little bit of a transition almost for you, sort of between the sort of present and the future. It was like
yeah.
a sort of development of ideas and techniques, thinking about new landscapes, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
And just learning how to sort of do those landscapes before I sort of started putting them
Yeah.
in, seeing if they would work rather than
Yeah.
putting them together and them not working. So yeah, that was a jump that had to be done in a couple of stages. Yeah.
And how are those received?
Um, Good. Um, some I think worked, some were not so successful. It's interesting looking at your work and wondering, whether it was successful or not. I suppose it's the audience that decides.
Yeah.
I often sort of have shows and you go, that's my favorite work, and your least favorite work sort of sells first, and I didn't pick that. So, and I suppose that's why, in a way, that was a sort of very experimental sort of stage. It's to sort of really get a gauge of what people thought of the work as just landscapes. And then sort of when I worked out, which were the more successful ones, that those were maybe the ones that I transferred back into my portraits.
Mm. And do you feel like you can kind of hop around into, into the past and the present and future and keep it quite fluid, or do you feel like you're kind of on a path into the future?
At the moment, I'm on the path of the future, but I'm hoping that I can maybe revisit sort of certain ideas that I've thought about or did work in the past. What they'll look like will obviously be different from those particular works because I've my ideas have moved and my what I'm interested in has moved as well. But when you're looking at nostalgia, of course you've got to look at the past because that's what it's really about.
Mm.
Although it's the future looking back at now.
Yes, yeah.
So yeah, so I'm sure there's some scope for me to sort of revisit sort of ideas or potential works that I've done in the past for sure. I
Mm.
hope so.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Whether that happens or not, I don't know.
Yeah. And do you
We'll
feel
see.
like you enjoy kind of challenging yourself? Obviously, you have a slightly different perspective now after that experience you had, but are you feeling like you need that sort of stimulation of trying some new things, or is it more ideas based? You've got some ideas that you need to express.
Yeah, it was interesting. I was seeing a interview with Chuck Close, and it was his note to self, and he was asked, what inspires him, and he goes, "Well, inspiration is for amateurs. The rest of us just get to turn up and go to work." And I think what he means by that is just in work itself creates the ideas. You sort of when you start thinking about something, that's when the ideas come, and then that idea will follow another idea, and that idea sort of leads on. So I think that's sort of really what happens in most art practices work, where you just it's a natural progression about
Yeah.
what you're thinking at the time to go into the next idea. Sometimes it's trying to curb those ideas because you haven't got enough time in the day to sort of to do all the ideas. So you've got to sort of work out which is the best one of those that you're thinking about at the time, and just sort of slowly sort of work through those ideas.
Mm. Yeah,
Um,
it's so true. I feel like the more you work, the more ideas come and the more,
yeah,
you just develop and develop as you work, work
absolutely.
equals work,
Yeah,
it just
yeah,
keeps
exactly.
kind of
That's it. Yeah,
growing.
the next day becomes more obvious when you sort of put when you're thinking about it so intensively that the next day's work is just it becomes sort of obvious on what you
Yeah.
need to do. Yeah.
And I feel like, I kind of get that quote from from Chuck Close that
mm,
it's almost like you need the ideas of other people to start with because you haven't generated your own
yeah,
momentum almost. And then
yeah,
once you
yeah,
kind of get your own momentum, then you leave those ones behind a bit and you're kind of
yeah,
off in your own
yeah.
head. Yeah.
On your own journey, yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
which is
So,
good. It's a good thing.
yeah, yeah, totally.
So, I'm just going to pause for a second.
Thanks.
And you said to me earlier that you feel like you're creating, a big Andrew Barnes Graham family of people,
Yeah,
and the characters that you're portraying, you feels quite sort of connected to them as you would painting them,
yeah,
and you do often title your works with the person's name. So can you tell us about that process for you?
yeah. Yeah, it's interesting how artists sort of title their work, and um, someone like Evan Woodruff, he titles the day that they were finished. And so everyone has different ideas about how they title their work, and it just seems sort of natural that I paint people, so they should have names, and
Yeah.
maybe so I make up their names, and so I feel like that they're my children, and I get to know them as I paint them, and I suppose it's sort of like I it'd be like having a child, and you didn't have to name them until they left home at the age of 18, and you sort of get to know their personality, and then so that you pick the right name for them as you know them as their personality. So I feel like a bit like that, where I'm getting to know them, who they are, how ambiguous expression sort of makes me feel about what I'm getting from the work. And then so I pick names according to what I think suits their personality, I suppose. So I have a baby names book, and I go through, and it sort of has all the names of what it means as well. And so it might be, a work that means wise. And she looks really wise. So that's the perfect name for her.
Mm.
So yeah, so they all have sort of individual sort of names, and I certainly um, use names from all around the world. They could be Arabic, they could be Sanskrit, they could be Old French, they could be Chinese names or Polynesian names. So I definitely look at the what the name means in their culture, and if I feel that sort of meaning identifies with the portrait, well, then that's the name that they're going to be
Mm.
getting.
That's so
Yeah,
interesting. And that it would be such a great thing if we could do that as parents, is to wait until they're 18 to give them their name, because it is always
yeah,
really strange, isn't it, when you have this tiny little baby and you name it something
yeah,
like George, which always feels kind of weird when they're just born. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And then
So yeah,
you have to adopt them out
and you
when
let them
they
go. Yeah, they
yeah, let them
leave
go.
home, and yeah, and you've got to give them out into the world, and yeah, it is. It's very much. I feel like it's very much sort of like creating a human and sort of releasing it into the world. And hope you've done enough for it to give joy to the world.
Yeah, I love that. And it's
Mm.
such a personal thing. It's almost like you've sort of fathered them off into their sort of next journey as
Yeah,
well as
yeah,
painted
totally.
them. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And
Which
hopefully you've made them sort of into the right sort of human that sort of they can sort of help bring joy to other people.
yeah, and it's also about like the adoption process in a way. It's like you're finding the right family for the painting to go to kind of
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
which is actually
And
quite
that's
a
what
lovely thing.
yeah, and that's what they sort of say about sort of paintings, that you just got to have get the right person in front of the right painting at the right time.
Mm.
That it speaks to them and stuff. And sometimes it can happen really quickly, and sometimes it takes longer.
And who
But
do you
it's
think
sometimes
your
fine.
audience is? Because I think we have talked on the podcast before about New Zealanders being a little bit afraid of portraiture at times, of actually
Yeah,
purchasing a portrait.
yeah,
Yeah.
totally. There definitely sort of is that, and there's also I've heard a lot about usually it's a sort of a female's decision whether a piece of furniture or a piece of art or a piece of anything is allowed to sit in her house. Even if the husband's buying it. How are you going to find a beautiful woman? Why a woman's never going to allow such a beautiful woman in her house. You know, usually it's going to be a male who sort of who buys your work, and I found it's been the exact opposite. That it's been mainly women who have been the instigator to get their husbands to look at my work and purchase my work, which is really interesting.
That's really interesting.
Um, yeah, so yeah, yeah, it's
Mm,
I suppose, yeah, as regards the ideas around people who find it weird having other people in their house. I've certainly struck that. Um, I like having pictures of people in my house. I find that they become sort of part of the family, and the more you stand in front of them, you sort of feel the more you feel like to get to know them. And
yeah.
yeah, so but yeah, it is. Yeah, it's probably a little bit harder work to sell than abstract expressionism.
Yeah, it's really it's quite fascinating, isn't it? And I wonder if
Mm,
people, I mean, obviously people are loving your work from your color palette, which we haven't talked about yet,
mm,
and your composition and other things and your technical
mm.
skill. But I wondered, I mean, do you get feedback from your collectors and what they're actually connecting? Does it happen very often that people are being reminded of somebody they know, or have you had much feedback on why people are buying?
Yeah, I have had people buy work because it reminded of them of someone. I obviously early in my sort of career, I used to get a lot of commission work as well. So I've painted some portraits of loved ones that have passed that have been the scariest portraits I've ever painted.
Yeah,
Um, Particularly because when you look for a subject as a painter, it's often different from how a photographer looks um, at a work. So often I've been having to sort of paint portraits that were that the photo that I'm referencing wasn't really a if I was going to photograph that person myself, I would have done it quite differently. So that becomes a challenge as well when you're sort of painting someone who's died and means so much to that family, and do it justice because they've obviously commissioned you to do this work of that's a very special part of their life that's no longer and stuff, and it's such a huge weight of responsibility to do it the best you possibly can, and so they're horrifically terrifying to paint. Um,
mm. Why do you do it to
so
yourself?
there's hmm?
Why do you do it to yourself? Why do you allow those kind of commissions?
um, yeah, I to I suppose many days to pay the rent and to eat.
Yeah, in reality.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I hadn't had to sustain a career because of money, then maybe I might not have taken on a couple of them. But again, it's also an honour for someone to trust you with something so important as that. So yeah, I don't know. Is it trying to challenge myself, or whether it's because I need some cash, or whether I don't know. It's a lot of them have been sort of people that I know. So that's a tough one. But
Yeah,
those sort of portraits are quite challenging and difficult if I don't get a chance to photograph them myself
yeah,
to
I can
reference them.
imagine. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I think it would be really tough. I mean, the person who's commissioning you obviously loves your style and they're
yeah,
happy for you to sort of bring your own interpretation to the photo, but it
yeah.
is a tricky one when you're trying to
Well,
capture
sort of
somebody.
no, and they know the subject so much better than I do. Whereas the normal portraits I do, I try to make them ambiguous, and my viewers aren't really supposed to know anything
Yeah,
about my portraits until they come in front of them. So they know so much about the personality and the idiosyncrasies of the person that they're wanting to commission me, and I know nothing about apart from trying to find out as many stories as I can about them or about their personality, which is weird when you're trying to paint personality. It's
yeah.
it's, it's different from painting just a representation of likeness.
Mm, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be really challenging. So can you talk us through your process, how you actually make a painting?
Yeah, so I do a lot of research and finding sort of imagery that sort of speaks to me that I could sort of translate and put into paintings. Often I'll be sort of scrolling and do 3 4 hours and not find one sort of image that sort of speaks to me that I want to translate and then redraw and turn into painting. I don't know. I still can't work out what I can describe what that is. I just know when I see it. Um, so there's a lot of that happenings before, and also into the landscapes as well, and something that I could sort of fit with a figure. Then sort of obviously redraw it to this new way that I'm working. Um, and then it's sort of then I've got to start thinking. I suppose the first thing is size. I mean, some portraits look great, big and huge, and some just don't. So then there comes a size thing about how big I'm going to make this painting. That's going to really is it going to be more an intimate portrait, or is it going to be something that sort of you stand back and it just smacks you in the face, so it needs to be big. And then I suppose I go through the palette, and so I do most of my color mixing right at the start. Um, so I I make and so because I'm doing quite a lot of thin sort of layers. I paint very thin. There's no texture in my paintings. There's lots and lots of layers, but they're painted very very flat. And so I do lots and lots of layers. So I've got to make sure if I'm doing complex sort of colors where there's sort of 5 or 6 different colors within that sort of base, I can't ever recreate that because if I get the proportions are slightly different, it will change the color. So I've got to make up quite a bit of color. So I do all my color mixing first, and then I have them in sort of ice trays so that I can control the how dense or how transparent or liquidy I make that layer. Because if I did it on a palette, it just sort of dries out too quickly. And so I put them all into ice trays, and then I can cover them at the end of the day, and I can come back and they'll
Mm,
stay like that for weeks. If it takes 2 weeks to 3 weeks to paint a painting, I know I can go back, and if there's I make a mark, I've got that color and I can easily sort of
yeah, that's
touch
a
that
great
up. So
idea. I love
and it
that.
also sort of helps me when I'm looking at the palette of seeing all of the colors, side by side. I can really get an understanding about how the palettes, the colors work against each other because obviously some colors work differently depending on which color it sort of sits next to. So having them all together, really, I can really have a very good understanding about how the overall feeling of the palette color is going to go. So I do that, and then just I suppose work from back to front, top to bottom, old school sort of way it was sort of done. I suppose it's from watching my dad and my granddad work. Um, and yeah, just sometimes there's days where I'm not making any progress. I'm just doing layer over layer over layer, trying to get a density in the paint, but still
Mm,
having this really nice sort of flat sort of
yeah,
feel to the canvas.
yeah. And you draw the portrait first and then paint the landscape behind and
Yeah,
then come to the portrait. And the
yeah.
eyes and
Well,
the mouth are the last
yeah,
thing. Yeah.
yeah. Certainly the landscape. Well, you do the drawing, and then you'll sort of sit in front of your drawing, and even though that you've done your own drawing, and then I'll project it so that I get exactly what my drawing looks like. Otherwise, I'll just move and change too much. Especially when you say as you move a line a couple of millimeters, it changes the whole look of the face. And then sort of just really sort of spend a time really redrawing, just getting proportions right. Because sometimes it can look good in an A4, but then you sort of when you see it's huge, it's sort of some things can sort of change the way it looks back at you. So I sort of do a lot of redrawing, and then yeah, as I say, just do the landscape first, and then sort of work towards the figure. And um, it's interesting. I hear some people say that they can't paint a portrait until the eyes are done. The eyes got to be first. I tend to be I suppose, Modigliani. I put them, if he didn't put his, eyes in his paintings
Mm,
till the last ones he did. But yeah, I tend to sort of do sort of mainly about the skin and the tone and the contouring of the face really before I sort of go into the eyes and hair and stuff.
And then adding the eyes, and then that's when they really turn into your children,
Yeah,
I imagine.
that, yeah, they yeah, that's when they sort of start to yeah, show their cheekiness and their quirkiness and their yeah, their spark of life. Yeah,
And their personality. And how
yeah.
do you choose the clothing? Is that part of the photograph that you've found in your research, or do you explore other
No,
ideas?
usually it's quite different. The face is sort of just itself, and then I'll find the costuming in different other research. I mean, lately in this last sort of body of work with the show coming up, I've it's just the outline of the clothing, and then I've put it transpired and put in like a different landscape. So there's like two dual landscapes. There's the landscape that the figure's sitting in, in front of, but then in the clothing, I've created this sort of a different sort of landscape that sort of alludes to the idea of exoplanets and other worlds and stuff like that. So there's, this landscape in the clothing could be from a different, place in the universe and or in the future on this
Mm,
planet, or so bringing the ideas about that sort of future. So the clothing really now has just become sort of really outlined shape, and then I just sort of fill it in with this, just a dual landscape.
that's really interesting.
So yeah, it changes it. Yeah, the
Yeah.
costume is an interesting thing. It's changed right through the course of working, looking at the history of past and then the future with cross cultural sort of costuming of different cultures, and then now it's gone into really just basically being about I suppose really just sort of looking back at ourselves about what we're doing to the landscape and how that might change in the future.
Yeah. And some of your works, like they've got sort of retro vibes with the fabric, and there's all sorts
Yeah,
of things that you can see in there, and it's
yeah,
another symbol, isn't it, for communicating something for you, I guess.
yeah. Or time, I suppose.
Time, yeah,
History. Yeah.
yeah, which is
Mm.
very clever. And do you feel like you're kind of into fashion yourself? Because it feels like it is quite a big part of what you're doing. Like it must be a bit of
Yeah,
an interest for you.
yeah, it has. Yeah, yeah. I think probably from the first ever dress up party I ever went to at the age of 15. Um, and still do, music festivals and dressing up is still, a very big part of dance culture is a big part of still, my life. It's my happy place, a dance floor. And so we definitely, but even through history of, I grew up in the 80s, the craziest sort of period of fashion there probably ever will
Mm,
be.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, no, I've always been interested in fashion. I tend to, as I've gotten older, become a bit more wiser about not picking so trendy clothes that can sort of a little bit more classical, that sort of can cross decades and still be okay to sort of wear some more classical sort of ideas of sort of yeah. I suppose it's like everything. My taste in art, my taste in furniture, then my taste and everything changes as you sort
Mm.
of move through life.
Yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it?
Yeah,
How that happens. We built a very sort of minimalist house, concrete and
yeah,
white and wind glass,
yeah, yeah,
and then bought a sort of late 60s shack down near the beach at Muriwai. And
yeah,
not it's not a shack, but you know what I mean. It's way
yeah,
more
yeah,
sort of rustic,
yeah,
shack,
yeah.
slightly shabby. We've done some renovating on it, but and I just love that sort of the retro vibe, mid-century vibes.
Where
And I
yeah,
could never go
absolutely.
back to that minimalist. We built two houses, and even going back to a brand new house doesn't appeal. I love the feel of the sort of older house now.
Yeah, it sort of
Yeah.
has it sort of we're certainly mid-century modern in our house, and it allows sort of to there's more memories based in the things that you collect,
Yeah.
more histories to it. Like I do love architecture. I wanted to be one when I was young,
Mm.
and I like brutalist architecture. I like modernist architecture. I like the California sort of flat sort of
Yeah.
house with the beautiful floor to ceiling windows. But I was talking to it with a friend of mine, Ben Hanley, actually just yesterday. Um, and we were talking about it, and he's going, well, it's really lovely architecture, but where do you hang your paintings?
Yeah,
And it's all
true.
glass. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. That could be an
So you
issue.
have to have a really, really big house if it was modernist architecture, that you have one wall of all windows, and then but the rest of it would just have to be sort of, just basically all walls to put your painting.
Yes, yeah. I love that look too. I love the 50s architecture.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, so yeah, so I was just going to say with Muriwai, for some reason, I think
mm,
it's because it's quite an arty community.
yeah,
There, when we first moved out, which was like 23 years ago, we are like, oh my God, there's so many freaking fancy dress parties. Like it wasn't our thing at all.
yeah, yeah,
And then
yeah.
we sort of started getting into it. And then like it's so funny in Muriwai, sort of most Saturday nights there's people running around the streets with some
Right,
crazy gear on
yeah,
and
yeah,
there's
yeah.
something
Guns
really
every
kind of
time.
yeah, there's something
Yeah,
empowering and sort of freeing about dressing up and sort of putting on another
yeah,
persona and going crazy.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
it's sort of, yeah, you feel like it allows yourself to be your alter ego, and
Totally.
and it will be okay.
Yeah, that's so
No one's
true.
going to
I
judge you
think,
for it.
yeah, I've got like, I think I have some sort of exhibitionist persona very deep down and it comes out,
Mm,
at certain times.
yeah,
Um, and it's sort of when you're dressed up, you feel like you can kind of go there, it's a
yeah,
license
yeah,
to go a bit crazy, which is always
yeah.
fun. Anyway, let's just talk about your exhibitions that you have at Art House Contemporary.
Mm,
So you're
yeah.
obviously very involved with that place. Can you tell us about how that's been set up and how you run
Yeah.
it?
Well, I sort of, yeah, I was with a gallery that wanted me to sign a contract, and I asked all our stable of artists, and have you been asked, to sign this contract? And they're going, no, we haven't. And I'm thinking, is it just me because I was getting a lot of commission work, and that the gallery wanted to take a cut of my own commission work and stuff, and so we sort of parted ways, and I sort of it really sort of was was not a great time, and it really upset my sort of confidence about how galleries work and stuff. And so I decided to go and sort of do my own stuff, and so I had this exhibition at Art House, and the lady who sort of was running it, we just connected, and she was wanting to get out and move her studio. So she offered me her studio there. So Art House is basically a place in Aoraki where the owners this building earmarked to be pulled down, and he'd gone to Cuba and he'd seen this art collective sort of gallery, and he thought, oh, that's what I'll do at this space, in Aoraki Bay Village where we can showcase art and stuff, because it's the roof leaks, so we can't really sort of tent it out anyway, and it's going to be demolition soon. So we'll do this, and it'll be fun vibe for the sort of community there. And so I got an opportunity to take over one of these studios. And so as that, there's about sort of six of us who have studios there. And it changes as artists come in and out and move and go, to different things around the world and their life and stuff. But so we run it as it's sort of like a community-based art gallery space where we've been fortunate enough that the owner charges us basically no rent at all, but we've got to run it as a contemporary art gallery to sort of give some art sort of culture to the environment. So we run it sort of as a thing where we've all come from sort of starting out as artists, and we want to sort of give opportunities back to sort of artists who don't have gallery representation, and be at a place where they can showcase their art and have exhibitions and start their art career and stuff. And we don't take any commission on sales. We just rent the space out for a minimal amount a week. They have to obviously run their own exhibition. They have to man their own exhibition and stuff. Have opening nights, and we'll do that sort of thing. So and it started off being something that was going to maybe last a few years, and sort of 15 years in now, and because the developer hasn't been able to sort of get the plans across the road to develop it, so it just has just kept on going. And so we run it as sort of an artist run space for artists to very cheaply host their own
Mm,
exhibitions.
I love that idea.
Um, yeah,
That's
it's
brilliant.
really cool, and we've had some really really good artists that have done amazing things after they've shown. It has been a showcase for them to sort of for other galleries, gallery dealers to sort of see their work and yeah, start off their careers, which is great.
Mm,
It's
that
yeah,
is so
it's really
amazing.
cool.
And I
Yeah.
love the idea that the artist, has some responsibility to run the show because that's,
Mm,
for me, that would be a way I would love to show my work, to be there and to talk about it. I feel like
yeah,
that's
absolutely.
a lovely sort of addition that you're providing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's usually pretty scary for artists to do that, talk about their work and stuff. So it sort of it throws them in the deep end a little bit. You've got to do your own marketing. You've got to do your own cataloging. You've got to sort of and so we give them sort of help and ideas around how to do that. But essentially, it's like anything in life, you got to do it yourself,
Yeah. I love that. I
and
just think it's the
and
best
that's how you
concept.
learn.
And how great
Yeah,
that you've managed to keep it going for 15 years and not what you
yeah,
expected.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I sort of I have galleries that show my work as well, but then I sort of use this as my springboard to showcase new work. So yes, I'm having my show there this year
Mm.
in about 3 weeks' time, I think it is.
Yes. So I think we're
Yeah,
going to publish your episode just before the show. So people, once they've listened to this amazing account of your life and your practice, then they can go and see your work in person and
yeah,
meet you.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So that's
awesome.
that's going to be around about the 19th of November, did you say?
Yeah, I
16th?
think it's the opening's on the 20th of November, and it goes for about 2 weeks.
Okay. Now that's I
Yeah,
just love that concept, and then you're working out of that space as well. It's great.
yeah. So it's easy for me to man it because I'm there anyway,
Yeah, it's
and
perfect.
I can carry on with new work and stuff like that. But yeah, it's a cool little space. There's not many people who know about it. But it's a really good opportunity, a space for as I say, for up and coming artists to yeah, start their
Mm,
showcasing their work.
yeah. And
Yeah.
for somebody listening who wants to get involved in that, is there a website that they can go to?
Yeah, so arthousecontemporary.com, they can sort of go to our website and there'll be links there to put proposals in. Actually, we're taking proposals now at the moment to for next year's exhibition schedule. So yeah, if you want to show your work and yeah, go to the website and if you're close, come and have a look and check out the space and see if we think it might be right for you.
That's a lovely space. Yeah,
Mm.
I went to somebody's. Whose was it? Oh, Anthony Zemke.
All right, yeah, he's what a lovely young
A
guy he is.
lovely guy. I actually,
Yeah,
sadly, I spoke to him on the podcast and then something happened to the recording and we lost it. And it was the
yeah,
best conversation. And we're just like,
yeah.
haven't quite faced doing it again, but we will
Yeah,
at some
yes,
stage.
yeah.
Yeah.
He is so easy to talk to for God, he's mature for his age, isn't he?
Yeah, he really is. He's very,
Yeah,
yeah, it feels like
he's
he's been on this planet for longer than he has. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Just a really lovely nature about him. Yeah.
Mm. Oh, that's
So
such
yeah,
an
great.
interesting idea. Brilliant. Sorry,
Yeah,
what were you going to say?
and especially so when you see get young artists who are straight out of art school to do that, it's great. You feel like it, and yeah. I mean, I did a project with a girl just the start of this year. I got a call from a girl from Luxembourg and wanting to do a project with me. And my wife was going, oh, she's not catfishing you, don't send her any money and all this sort of thing. And we worked out that it was quite legitimate. And it was this girl who had somehow found us and she was doing her gold medal Duke Award, Duke of Edinburgh Award. And she had to go to a country she's never been to, stay with a family she's never been, no, do a project with someone she's never met before. So she sort of found out that she wanted to come to New Zealand. Then she sort of found where she was, that she could get a train to Oraki Bay village where the art gallery was. And so she contacted me to say, would you do this project with me? She was a 17-year-old. She was doing this to get a job. So she wants to go to Berlin School of Art. And yeah, speaks 5 languages. It's an absolute real go-getter. And yeah, so we did a project with her. So she came out and we did this project with her at Art House. And it was really cool and we've kept in contact obviously and seeing her develop and just yeah being given the opportunity for young people to sort of showcase that there's a pathway to an art career is and seeing that happen is yeah it's really rewarding.
Yeah, well, you're facilitating a fantastic service and supporting people, and it's very
Mm.
community minded, but it's also, supporting artists in a different way, especially young emerging artists, because
Yeah,
it is quite tough, isn't it, for people to get their work out there if galleries aren't
yeah,
accepting their work.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, totally. You've
Mm.
got to do it yourself, but then you've got to have a space to be able to do that, and there's not many spaces that that allow that, especially as cheaply as what
Yeah.
$80 a week is all
Oh,
we
it's
charge.
fantastic. Yeah,
Mm.
so good. And what's your sort of feeling? I mean, you touched a little bit on the slightly negative experience you had with that other gallery, but what is your feeling about the art world in general in New Zealand at the moment?
Well, I think it's good. I mean, it was, and I suppose at the end of the day, the only reason why I sort of felt it was negative because I thought it was sort of really I was the only one in the stable that was being asked to sign this contract. But in the end, I found out that they eventually everyone did, and obviously I realised that if I'm ever going to go to a larger gallery, then I'm going to have to sign a contract of exclusivity, with that gallery, and that's okay. And I'm not against that. It's sort of how the system works, and there's good reasons for that. If they want to control your pricing and stuff like that. Gosh, I mean, you hear stories. I've heard stories about artists in New York where um, you know the gallery will have a price for someone's painting, and the person will come in and have enough money to buy that painting, and the gallery will turn around and go, well, actually, you're not the sort of person that I want owning this work. This piece should be in a museum, and so unfortunately, not a big enough art collector to, even though you can afford it, for you to own it.
Really? Oh my
And
God.
so there's sort of this really, yeah, I mean, it's crazy how the sort of the art world's sort of gone, and at that top level blue chip sort of pricing and stuff. But obviously, that's what happens when you're going into big galleries, and even in this country, you have to be exclusive to that gallery, and they really control your career. Is about to get you to that next level.
Mm,
It's part and parcel of the game now.
yeah. And you are with Black Door Gallery in Parnell and Muse Gallery in Havelock North, is that right?
Yeah, yeah, which is interesting because it was sort of um, was with Kylie at Sanderson Gallery, which is now where Black Door is.
You're
So
right.
it's quite weird, sort of going back into the old solving ground of a sort of a gallery that I used to sort of show at. But it was sort of they were great. I mean, they're two lovely people who were really passionate, and I sort of gave them a chance because they just hounded me for years about representing me, and finally I sort of gave in because they were just so enthusiastic about sort of showing my work. So and it's worked out great, and I and
Mm.
I trust the way they're going. I see their vision, and yeah, it's been a good relationship.
And they're happy for you to run to exhibit through Art House
Yeah,
Gallery.
yeah. I haven't signed a contract with them yet, but and that's a little bit what I like. I know that they allow me to because I have been really developing this new work. And they've been allowing me to that space to trial it, and you know which is very difficult for galleries when they're representing an artist that especially when you jump around so sort of much, it becomes very hard for them to sort of find the client for an artist who jumps around so much. So they've been really good at
Mm.
allowing me to develop this new body of work, and I'll definitely obviously pay them back in gratitude with giving them my best work in the future. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's
that's so
all
good.
good.
I mean, it seems like a wonderful balance in a way, if you've got the right gallerists with who are sort of seeing the bigger picture for you, and then you've got a
Yeah,
place where you can show quite experimental work if you want to without any
mm,
restrictions.
yeah, yeah,
Mm, that's quite good. Yeah.
yeah,
And I'm just going to pause for a second.
yeah.
And in amongst all these shows that you have and all the painting that you do every day and very diligent artist, you
Mm,
are teaching. Um,
mm,
and I think that's a lovely combination too. It probably challenges you and your thinking, and also you're
absolutely.
giving back again, which is a great thing.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
tell us about your teaching and why you chose to do that.
Um, I suppose I sort of started doing it because I needed to find a part-time job, um, like we all do as artists, sort of starting out. My granddad was a teacher. He taught at Gisborne Girls High for all his life. Um, so it was sort of not a scary thing for me. And it just sort of grew. And what I love about it is that it sort of reinforces your own ideas about the way you think about art, because you're having to sort of tell and inspire sort of other people. So and so yeah, it was a great job to have as a part-time job, because it was all about what I was interested in, and it reinforced my own ideas, and it inspired people. And there were times where some of my students even inspire me, and I learn just as much from them as they do from me, I suppose. So it's a very much a two-way thing of just us being in a space where we sort of get to sort of explore ideas, and I can teach technique, and and then also the students themselves, really sort of bounce the ideas off each other, and watch. And the greatest way to learn painting is to watch someone do it.
Yeah.
I got to do that with my granddad and my dad, and you really see students sort of really developing quite quickly when they can watch actually people work.
Mm.
So it's a great environment, and I feel like I get just as much back as I hope I give them a lot as well. But I get a lot
Yes.
from it.
I'm sure you do. I've heard lots of good things about your teaching. And it's building community, isn't it? It's sort of
Absolutely,
extending artist
it's all about
community,
community.
which
Yeah,
is, yeah, very important.
essential. Yeah,
Yes, yeah. And I think that would be lovely. And is that a sort of course that you can pop into and stay as long as you like, or how does that run?
yeah. I've had students with me for 15 years.
Amazing.
It's amazing. And I sometimes wonder if it's because there's a lot of sort of older sort of mature ladies, and I'm wondering. I hear sort of stories that they started doing it because their husbands retired, and they got sick of them with nothing to do, following them around the house, following them into the laundry, and just leave me alone. So they had to get out of the house. And well, how do we get out of the house? Let's start a painting course then. And so, but they all become sort of really quite good artists. And I've had some of my students sort of be with me who have gone straight into masters programs at Elam and Wycliffe, which is
Mm.
cool.
Mm. And is
So
it work that's like, is it all portraiture or all quite
no,
realistic?
it's all whatever one wants to do. So I just call it as an open sort of contemporary art course, and everyone can paint whatever they want to paint. If they want to learn paint pouring, or abstract expressionism, or realism, or that I just sort of see what level they're at, and try and get them to the next level. I sort of try to sort of understand, what art inspires them, and then showcase them sort of artists that they might want to look at, once I understand, where they're wanting to take their art. And then, so I can sort of teach them anything really. I just, painting is really just all about sort of color, line, contrast, and sort of composition really. So it's every shape, and so whether it's the shape of an eye, or whether it's a shape of a vase, or a flower, or a car, or they're just shapes, and they're just colors, and they're just lines, soft lines,
Mm.
hard lines, contrasts. And so I can teach them sort of really whatever they want to paint really, whether it's abstract, realism,
Mm.
and hopefully develop them into their own practice about creating their own art. It usually starts from copying someone else's work, and then learning how they've done that, and then process, and color theory, how to mix colors and stuff like that, and get more sophisticated in that, and then sort of hopefully inspire them into sort of creating their own sort of voice of
Yeah,
what they want to portray. Yeah,
that's amazing. I think that's just such a beautiful synergy and a lovely balance in your life to have that teaching and that building of
yeah,
community, plus the
yeah,
building of community through Art House Contemporary and giving
yeah.
back and supporting artists and then your own art practice. I mean, to me, that just seems like the dream career.
Uh, and you go through that sort of near-death experience, and that's the first thing that sort of came out of it for me was giving back. I've been doing that a lot in my art, but then I sort of started doing. I wanted to do like give back to community and maybe sort of go to sort of South Auckland with her boys who have no fathers and sort of be a buddy sort of system. And I was looking at that, and I got an opportunity to work for a company which I do part time now as well as part of my sort of giving back sort of mantra that I've been sort of adopting since my death experience, and which has come around full circle, which was the craziest sort of coincidence. And so I now care for this guy with Huntington's disease, and I take him out every Friday. But it just so happens that he's Pat Hamley's son.
Really?
So Ben's a great guy. Huntington's disease, like his father had, and he's a fantastic artist himself. Although he doesn't work in he did all the windows in the Parnell Cathedral. So a great glass maker as well as stained glass maker, best in the country. But so we go out and just do art gallery tours, and that's how we sort of just spend our time. And he tells me these stories about that you'd never read in art history books, because he was there at the parties with his, with the big five.
Mm.
And so we just have a ball going around and looking at art and stuff, and so for me, that's sort of therapy. For me, it's amazing how when you give, really, you'll be surprised how much you get back. And I get that from my teaching. I get that from this new friendship I've struck with Ben and Art House and stuff, that I've found these new friendships and stuff, and it's incredible that you learn when you do it that as soon as you sort of give a lot, you just get so much more back
Yeah,
than you
you
feel like you're
you
giving.
really do. Yeah, so true.
Mm,
Oh, that's really beautiful. I love your outlook on life, which, may have been sort of accentuated by that negative experience, but you've
yeah,
you've taken that and made something positive out of it, which is so great. But I do imagine that you were probably similar before that happened. You probably had a similar outlook.
yeah. It just highlights. It becomes
Yeah.
it feels like it comes clearer
Yeah, and it
and
makes you
to
sort of want
face
to
with.
do things that are in your
Yeah,
mind. You're like, actually, I'm gonna do it. Yeah.
exactly. I've got no time left. Take more risks. There's no. It's not. You've got to make it happen now. Otherwise, they're just sort of ideas that you've always liked to do, but you never get around to doing.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good message to all of our listeners out there. So, just
Mm,
to finish off,
yeah.
what would you say to somebody, starting off in their artistic career? Have you got any advice from all the years of experience?
I I remember hearing a someone say, I don't know who it was, and they were asking the question, what would you say to a young person? And it was a really interesting way of looking at it. It's like at your age, if you did something and you tried something and you failed, and then you decided to try something totally different, and you gave that a go, and that didn't quite work out. So then you started something else and then tried that, you would still have enough time to be the best at it that you could be and make a career out of it and be the best in the world at it. So why wouldn't you the first time try something that you really love? Because if it doesn't work, you've still got plenty of time for plan B and plan C and whatever. So if you've got that much time to still fail and still have enough time to do something else and be the best at it that you can possibly be and most successful, then why wouldn't you try the first time to do something that you love?
Yeah, that is great advice. Yeah, make it plan A instead of plan E.
Yeah, just do it. And if you're young, because you've got plenty of time to, if it doesn't work, to do something else and still be successful at that. So,
Yeah.
my idea of if you want to be an artist and that's what you love, then just just do it. Just go and do it.
Mm. So true. And a great way to finish. Thank you so much, Andrew. I've really
And
loved
pleasure.
meeting you.
I
I've
love
heard so
meeting you
many
too.
good things about you, and a few of my guests have recommended I speak with you. So I know how busy you are, and I really appreciate you coming onto the podcast. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Done.